Kenyan workers and address our nation. Thank you, and God bless Kenya, Your Excellency, the President.
Thank you, Waziri. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Madam Jacqueline Mugo of the Federation of Kenyan Employers, Brother Francis Atwoli, Secretary General of COTU, and to all fellow Kenyans participating with us today, let me say what a great pleasure it is to join all workers of Kenya and indeed the rest of the world to commemorate this International Labour Day. On this day, we come together to celebrate our workers as creators and makers of things, and to recognize the best efforts of their labor, from factory to factory, from field to field, from office to office. The labor of their hands has without doubt transformed our country from year to year, and without doubt from generation to generation. It is a fact that without labor, there can be no prosperity. As one philosopher noted, labor is what brings the difference to everything. Evidently, and without a doubt, labor is the game changer of all progress. And that is why today we celebrate the fruits of our labor with thanksgiving in our hearts, and indeed, as instructed by our national anthem. Fellow Kenyans, when I addressed you on this occasion last year, and my friend Brother Atwoli will remember, the first wave of the COVID-19 had just hit our country. Little did we know at that time that 1 year later we would be celebrating Labor Day under the third wave of this virus. 14 months later, after our first COVID case was reported, our economy has slowed down. Without doubt, our informal sector has shrunk. And in the hospitality sector, some enterprises have literally closed. Similarly, the cogs in the manufacturing sector have stopped turning as fast as they did. And indeed, it is not lost on me that the people most affected by these unfortunate events are the workers of our country. But in these unprecedented times, and unprecedented not only in Kenya, but globally as well, Kenyans have a way of intuitively pulling together and coming up with innovations and building resilience. Indeed, our founding fathers ingrained our national motto of Harambee, or pulling together, into our national psyche, and I am particularly grateful to the labor movement led by Brother Atwoli for keeping the spirit of Harambee alive during the COVID crisis. The labor movement in Kenya has not only pulled together the workers during the dark moments of this pandemic, it has also been a robust co-worker with government in trying to contain the crisis. And this is because it is during moments of crisis like COVID that those who suffer the most are workers, women, and children. This ability to step in and fill the gap during times of crisis is not something that is new to the labor movement here in Kenya. We have heard that when the colonizers banned all political parties in the mid-1950s, creating a crisis of political expression, the labor movement in Kenya stepped in and continued with the struggle for our independence. It became the funnel for political agitation, and when the leaders of the independence movement were detained during the emergency period, the trade unionists quickly stepped in and held fort until they were released. Undeniably, it was on the tide created by these acts of selflessness that some of our founding fathers arose. These included Tom Mboya, Clement Lubembe, Arthur Achuodo, Dennis Akumu, Martin Shikuku, Markham Singh, Fred Kubai, Bildad Kagia, and J.D. Kali, amongst many others. However, the effort by our labor movement to offer leadership and pull together the country in times of crisis did not stop in the 1950s. Many may recall that during the post-election violence of 2008, our labor movement was the first one to begin mediation efforts between warring divides. Indeed, their efforts to resolve the crisis had been recorded way before the arrival of the first international mediator. This uncelebrated role of the labor movement in Kenya must be put on record, more so their ability to act swiftly in times of crisis, and for that, as a country, we are grateful. Asante sana. Fellow Kenyans, I have submitted in the past indicating that a crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic represents also threats, but it also represents opportunity. Some get paralyzed by the hurdles, and they, unfortunately, end up doing nothing but complain. But those who see opportunity in the face of challenges also produce innovations. And because there are no workers without industry, I would like to take mention of two innovative industries during the past 14 months of COVID. The first one is Hela Clothing Limited. When the COVID pandemic hit our country, this EPZ company quickly discovered the opportunity and switched to the production of PPEs and face masks. By rejecting paralysis and embracing innovation, this company saved over 300 workers from joblessness. As Hela Clothing Limited was making this transition, the World Health Organization indicated that there was a monthly deficit of 89 million masks globally to fight COVID-19. Faced with this opportunity, Hela was swift to produce 10 million masks during the months of April and May. This meant that a single factory in Kenya manufactured 1 out of 18 masks globally to close the World Health Organization deficit. The second industry I'd like to mention is Bedi Investments, a Kenyan apparel company based in Nakuru, where the COVID pandemic hit. Bedi Investments retooled its productive capacity due to the fall in clothing demand from the West. Over 800 workers stared at unemployment due to falling demand from their partners, especially in the US and Europe. By July of 2020, however, Bedi began producing PPEs and masks. Their production capacity of PPEs shot with speed to 10,000 PPEs daily, and instead of firing its 800 workers, Bedi actually hired another 300 workers to cope with the heavy demand, not just from Kenya, but also from our neighboring countries. Today, Bedi Investments is responsible for manufacturing 80% of all PPEs available in Kenya and over 70% of the PPEs that are being supplied to our surrounding countries. The success of these two companies under mention was made possible because they were not paralyzed by the COVID crisis, but instead seized the opportunity and created innovations. But above all, their innovations preserved the much-needed jobs and even created new ones. Fellow Kenyans, I have spoken about swift action of the labor movement and the innovative ventures of the employer in industry. But now I will turn to the unbroken spirit of the worker. I have severally led our nation in celebrating our doctors, our nurses, our clinical officers, and all medical support staff who have worked without tiring for the past 14 months of this pandemic. Their current life of sacrifice and danger is without doubt a true testament that nothing is impossible, and they have taught us that if we put our hearts and minds to the service of others selflessly, we can indeed find our true happiness. To honor the sacrifice made by our health workers, therefore, I believe that we as citizens must exercise continuous civic responsibility. We must not overwhelm our health system by acting irresponsibly and raising the rate of admissions into our hospitals unnecessarily. Let us repay the sacrifice of our workers with civic responsibility. I lead the nation in celebrating our law enforcement and administration officers on this Labor Day also. These are probably the most unappreciated workers, but the most stretched by the COVID pandemic. We as a caring nation have noted their service, their dedication, their sacrifice, and we thank them for it. So indeed, I lead the nation in celebrating the invisible workers of our markets during COVID. They are the invisible suppliers who have kept our nation running in the face of difficult times. From the truck drivers who deliver our food from far, to the women in Marigiti who have distributed food continuously from 4 a.m. in the morning, to the border riders who connect the delivery dots to the digital sellers who make this possible. And I want to thank you all. And fundamentally, I wish to thank every Kenyan whose unsung efforts support our resilience against the challenges that we face today. Fellow Kenyans, let me end with some reflections on our current COVID-19 status as a nation. When I issued the Second Public Order Act of 2021 in March of this year, announcing the obtaining containment measures, our COVID caseload in Nairobi alone was 56,815. This caseload has now gone down to below 15,000 for the month of April, signifying a 74% decrease in infections in Nairobi. Data from our medical experts suggest that the same trend in the zoned areas we put on lockdown during March 26th of this year. After 1 month of lockdown, the COVID case load within the zoned areas has come down by 72%. In other areas of the Republic, the COVID caseload fell by 89% and in Mombasa and 90% in Busia between March and April of 2021. Given expert advice that we have received and on counsel of the National Security Council, as well as the National Emergency Response Committee on COVID-19, I therefore on this day issue Public Order number 3 of 2021 as follows. That 1, with regard to the zoned areas comprising of the counties of Nairobi, Machakos, Kiambu, Kajiado, and Nakuru, it is directed that the cessation of movement into and out of the zoned areas be and is hereby lifted. 2, that the hours of curfew in the zoned area are revised to commence at 10 p.m. and end at 4 p.m. with effect from midnight on this day of May 2021 until otherwise directed. 3, that in-person and congregational worship shall resume in strict fidelity to the guidelines issued by the Interfaith Council and the Ministry of Health. However, the attending congregation is still capped to 1/3 of the capacity of the place of worship. And that 4, the operations of restaurants and eateries in the zoned areas shall resume in accordance with the guidelines issued jointly by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, and restaurants are indeed encouraged to utilize outdoor spaces to maximize on physical and social distancing. For the entirety of the Republic of Kenya, it is directed as follows: that 1, all our educational institutions in all levels of learning shall reopen in accordance with the calendar issued by the Ministry of Education. And 2, that the resumption of sporting activities shall be guided by the regulations to be issued by the Ministry of Health jointly with the Ministry of Sports. 3, that all bars in the territory of the Republic of Kenya are to operate until 7 p.m. And I repeat, 7 p.m. 4, all employers and enterprises are encouraged to allow their workers to work from home, with the exception being with respect to employees working in critical or essential services that cannot be delivered remotely. And 5, that all hospitals are directed to limit the number of visitors for hospitalized patients to 1 visitor per day, to 1 visitor per patient per day. And 6, that the prohibition against political gatherings is extended until otherwise directed. And 7, that all other containment measures and guidelines that are not expressly set out in this address remain in force and shall be enforced dutifully. Fellow Kenyans, these measures that we institute today and all other interventions that the government has made over the last 14 months are geared towards responding to the unprecedented health threat that has gripped the world. I want to once again reiterate that we have instituted these restrictions with no joy. However, as a government with a responsibility and the mandate to protect the lives of Kenyans, we must fully acknowledge that that responsibility that is bestowed upon us calls for action to secure the lives of our people. Over the last year, we have witnessed challenges in other parts of the world, where the surge of infections has nearly led to the collapse of some globally acclaimed health systems. We see that happening even as we speak today. In moments like this, we are all called upon to make sacrifices for one another, for the collective good. It is never, and I repeat again, never the intent of government to make life difficult or unbearable for any of our citizens. Finally, as we prepare for the reopening of schools, let me emphasize again that our staying power in the fight against this pandemic is our greatest arsenal. I say so because if public responsiveness to health protocols goes up, then the possibility of further de-escalating the containment measures is within reach. Sadly, however, the opposite is also true, that a surge of infections will also necessitate an escalation of containment measures, a possibility that we all dread. So let us step up together for our motherland, we stand on the precipice of a very difficult situation, ladies and gentlemen. And it pays nothing to politicize or to sensationalize it. It is your life and the life of 50 million Kenyans that we are talking about here. If we partner and work together, we can maintain both the health and lives of our people as well as our economy. But if we fail to play our role, our individual role, like I said, like it or hate it, my responsibility is to protect life first. We shall and we will do everything that is necessary to prevent what we have seen happen in other countries happen in our country. So ladies and gentlemen, please be honorable, distinguished, and patriotic citizens of your land. Tell your fellow Kenyans. Teach your fellow Kenyans. Nobody enjoys the situation that we are in. But if, and I repeat again, if we are not able, because of our selfishness, individually, to maintain a situation where we are able to protect both life and economy, then, like I said, we have no choice but to protect that which we are fundamentally bound to protect under the Constitution, and that is life. So we shall escalate, but we can de-escalate if we work together as Kenyans, and we are able to continue life as normally as possible, while at the same time protecting each other from the kind of dangers that we have seen happen in countries that are much more advanced than we are. So ladies and gentlemen, let us step together for our motherland, step up for our families, step up for our neighbors, and for our beloved nation, Kenya. Fellow Kenyans, I conclude my address to you with a reflection from the third stanza of our national anthem. May the glory of Kenya and the fruits of our labor fill every heart with thanksgiving this Labor Day. There is no doubt. Without labor, as I said before, there is no prosperity. Labor remains the game changer of all progress, and we must therefore celebrate our workers as creators and makers of things during COVID, but also during good times. I wish you all a happy Labor Day, one full of thanksgiving for the fruits of your labor to the nation this year. Happy Labor Day. Stay safe. Stay home where possible. God bless you all, and may God bless Kenya. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Rais. Nitaomba sote sasa tusimame kwa heshima ili tuweze kumaliza maadhimisho yetu kwa wimbo wa taifa.